Well, hey, welcome everybody back to the Community Christian Podcast. I'm Jason, and across the table from me, I have Nathan.
Hello.
And if you are watching rather than listening, you will see that we are a third lighter today than we normally are.
That's right.
Ed is not with us on set today, and if you were watching last week, maybe you have a clue as to why. I think my top five basically did him in.
Yeah, that might have been part of the problem. So yeah, he's not even in the office this week.
No,
he's just gone.
We haven't even seen him.
No, he preached on Sunday and then was
out of town, man.
Can't do this anymore.
So, coronavirus didn't get him.
No, I hope not. I got something right now. I hope that's
you got a little something going on.
I got a little something going on right now. Everyone's a little worried right now. So 6 feet is what they say we're supposed to be. This is not 6
feet, son.
So I don't know. I don't know what that.
I've already had it, so I'm probably immune.
All right. Well, there you go.
Whatever it
is,
we will find out soon.
Not.
All joking aside, Ed is on a scheduled vacation. He is not gone. In case some of y'all took that seriously.
Yes.
Hopefully you didn't. But so we're gonna make do without him.
Yes.
I can tell you this. This podcast will be probably much shorter.
Yes.
And much less loud.
No, that's true. That's true. So go ahead and just crank up those headphones. You'll be all right.
You won't get ear-splitting, volume or laughter and stuff like that. So
that's true.
All right. Well, as always, I like to remind you, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube if you're watching. If not, on a podcast app if you want to listen. I don't think we're on Spotify. Stitcher yet.
No, I haven't heard that.
Haven't got the approval, but we are on Spotify, Google Play, Apple, all that good stuff. And the question link is still up on the description for everybody to leave us questions, and people are still doing that.
I know. We got more questions today.
We got more questions today, so make sure to do that. And watch for the clips that we'll be putting on YouTube to some of this stuff that you can share with friends. All right. So let's get into the questions first today. Somebody sent this question in, and they want to know, what is the reason that several times Jesus refers to himself in the third person?
Just because he likes to.
Right, he's just, he's that way.
He's that guy. Jesus likes lentils, and Jesus likes figs. Not the fig tree. We learned that last week.
But honestly, well, the truth is, he doesn't always refer to himself in the third person, but I wasn't absolutely sure what the questioner was referring to, but I'm going to have to take a big guess here, and I think I know. A lot of times, Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man.
Right.
And that is sort of a third-person reference. Mm-hmm. And so if that was what you were talking about, that's what I'm going to answer, whether or not that was what you were asking.
Well, this is what we want to
talk about. That's what I'm going to talk about. That term actually comes from a passage in the book of Daniel, way back in the Old Testament. I think it's around chapter 7, something like that.
That's what I think too.
And it's the name that the Jewish people always used to refer to the Messiah, who would come and set up a kingdom, and it would be an everlasting kingdom. And so you'll notice whenever Jesus he doesn't always use that term, but when he does, it's most often when he's trying to make a connection between himself and that term. He's identifying himself as the Messiah. So you hear a lot of people say, well, Jesus never came out and said he was the Messiah. Actually, he did. Mm-hmm. He was very clear. There were times when he just said, I'm the guy, but then there were just times he would use that term. Mm-hmm. And so any person who was of the Jewish heritage who heard that term would know exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I looked this up. I was curious. This term in the Gospels is used like 80 times.
Okay.
Which is a lot. I didn't realize that it was used. And 30 of those are in the book of Matthew.
I knew Matthew used it more, but I didn't realize 30 sounds more than I had in my head. So I knew that a lot.
Now, that could have been just, I found it somewhere. I'm trusting my source.
Yeah, I trusted the source.
I'm going to go back and look at that.
Yeah, I'd heard that Matthew, that was a big part of, when Matthew's writing his, because you can see that the more, once again, if you're in discipleship, that's our discipleship plug
there it is.
Of this episode. But the more you read the Gospels over and over again, you can really see like the different personalities of each of the writers kind of coming through. And Matthew really is connecting a lot of his stuff to Old Testament prophecy.
Yes,
that happens a lot in his, and so Son of Man's a big part. And I think it really ties in a lot to the series that we're in right now about Jesus is greater. That a lot of what Jesus was doing, and we talked about this before, is he's really comparing himself to Israel, and he's comparing himself to Moses, and he's comparing himself and really tying in all this Old Testament stuff and saying, I'm fulfilling that, and that's done. And so the Son of Man prophecies, you're talking about like in Daniel 7, they're also tied to all the other kind of Messiah prophecies that are throughout the prophets. And so they had all these understandings of what happened when the Messiah came. And there's one where Jesus, and I think this is in Luke 4 or something along those lines, where Jesus comes and opens up the scroll of Isaiah, and he says, I've come to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, and he reads this whole thing of sight to the blind and freedom for the captives and all this stuff. And then he says, in me, this is fulfilled. And really the idea that we don't get is they had a lot of hopes that were placed on the Messiah. And so like you said, when Jesus comes and he calls himself the Son of Man, that wasn't just a title to them. They understood all this other stuff, all this context that comes with it. And it's really where all their hope is placed on Jesus, so that when Jesus dies on what we now celebrate as Good Friday, for them, this is a devastating thing, because they feel like, well, all of their hopes were placed on Jesus doing these things in their mind, very much in an earthly context. And Jesus says, no, I'm bringing this kingdom that's going to change everything. And the resurrection, that's why the resurrection is our hope, and it was their hope, as they now understood, oh, this kingdom is something new, and it's greater than anything we understood before. Yeah,
and the Son of Man term that he uses for himself was controversial, and not just the fact that he was using it, but a lot of times in the way that he was using it. Like, for instance, one of the first times he ever uses that term, he says, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, which no good Jewish person would have ever considered, because he was the Son of Man. The Messiah was going to be this hero, conquering, powerful figure, and then Jesus says, and by the way, he's homeless.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, really? And they would have seen an offense to that. And then, of course, one of the last times he uses that term is when he's on trial in front of the Pharisees, and he says, and they say, identify yourself. Who are you? And he says, look, you're going to see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven in power, establishing his kingdom. And of course, it got him slapped across the face by the high priest, because they realized what he was saying was, I'm greater, and it's all fulfilled in me, and they saw that as just blasphemy, of course, and that was when they were just determined, this guy's got to go. So Jesus uses that term a lot to refer to himself, and yes, it is in the third person, but it is not because he's, it's not like when we refer to ourselves in the third person, we're just, I don't know, making ourselves
or
out
whatever.
to be
That's
something.
just the fun way we like to talk, I guess.
It's not. This is not trivial. This is something he's doing on purpose. And you mentioned, or we mentioned earlier, Matthew uses that term more than anybody, and it's because Matthew's gospel is written primarily to a Jewish audience.
That's right.
It is the gospel that quotes more Old Testament than any of the others. So he's primarily trying to convince these folks, hey, this is your Messiah, and you missed him. And so that's the reason.
Matthew opens with the genealogy. Matthew has the whole part about that. I just think that's huge, and we end up missing a lot of that for them. And I think the point you made about it being kind of controversial to them, the ideas everyone had about Jesus, or not about Jesus, but about the Messiah, were so radically different than anything Jesus was, which is why it was so hard for the Pharisees, or for really all these different groups that were religious leaders at the time. It was so difficult for them to see what was clearly God moving. I mean, you see Jesus do these amazing things. Even if you just talk about the miracles and the way he treated people and the healings and the exorcising demons, as we talked about last week. Clearly, this is God at work in something, but all of them, because it didn't fit in the box they had of what a Messiah would look like, they go, that's not him. That's not him. And obviously, we've been learning in this series, we all have a box we try to fit God into, but Jesus is greater than our box. He is greater than whatever we want to put him in.
All right. So hopefully that answers the question, whoever. Thanks for sending that one in. And here's another one. We got two today. So here's our second one.
Here we go.
Here's our second one. This one might be a pretty short answer.
All right.
That's
ready.
just the truth. And there's no disrespect to the person who sent it in. It's just going to be kind of short, maybe, or not. We talk about stuff.
We can make anything not that short.
On and on. But yeah, okay. Here's a question. They want to know: is there an easy way to explain the Trinity?
No.
No.
No, there's not an easy way to explain
There is
the
no
Trinity.
easy way to explain it. And I get where that comes from because people hear that term and they, and for those of you who are just new to this whole thing.
That's probably important.
What we mean by the Trinity is you've got God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. 3 in 1. Our God is one. We have one God, but He exists in 3 distinct persons.
Right.
And that doesn't mean 3 forms. That is not what it means. Mm-hmm. It means that He is one, but at the same time, He is the 3 at the same time. That's why it's hard to describe.
Yeah, it's
because you can't describe it.
No, you can't. And every time, the longer you talk about it,
yes.
the more you're talking about it, and I'm going, Jason, okay, be
Don't
careful
say that.
there, Jason, be careful. Because it's just one of those things that it doesn't make sense to our human minds how that could be possible. And we try to come up with metaphors that make it work, and they may be helpful to some degree, but they're not really the picture, because that's us trying to put our view of something, our minds around we are finite. We exist in a single place at a single time, and God is infinite. His mind, as the scriptures would say, is His ways are not our ways. That's right. His thoughts are not our. So, for us to be able to comprehend it, it doesn't fully grasp it.
And I think for a long time in my understanding of God, and I would probably be at that same place where I want to understand it. Please help me explain it. And like you said, I heard a lot of people use a lot of analogies, and they were helpful but always fell short. And then you could poke holes in them, because they all fall short. But what it helped me to come down on is that the moment that I feel that I have fully comprehended God and who He is and what His nature is like, I've got it complete. I don't have any more questions.
Right.
All mystery is taken out of it. The longer that I've grown as a Christian, the more I realize that that's not a healthy place for me to be in, because the moment I think I have God figured out, I've essentially put Him in a box. And if He is who He is, infinite, greater than everything, then there's always going to be things that I don't understand about Him.
Right.
And once I do understand them, then I'm probably not talking about God anymore.
Right.
I'm talking about probably what I have figured out in my brain to talk about God. So there's, I was talking about this to somebody one time. We as Westerners tend to not be comfortable with any sense of mystery when it comes to God, but the Eastern culture had no problem with that.
That's right.
So when they would have talked about this and said, well, it's just a mystery, people go, yeah, it is, and just moved on. We don't do it that way. We want to go, oh, no, it can't be a mystery. And I've got to understand this, because if I don't understand, then how can I know God? Well, that's just not true.
Right, yeah. It's this hyper-rationalistic mindset that makes me think that in order to engage with anything, I have to be able to understand it, or someone does. And it's honestly, it's almost like a pseudo-scientific way. And the reason I say pseudo-scientific is because it's not really scientific, because even science understands there's mystery, because that's the purpose of science, is delving into there are things that we still don't fully understand, and we're coming up with theories to try and explain these things. But even those theories, occasionally we get deeper into it and we go, that's not the right theory on it. And so the reason I say pseudoscience is it's almost it's almost this egotistical mindset that I often have of like, well, like you said, I should understand it. If I'm really rational, I need to have. So I'm willing to accept a half answer and say that's the full answer, instead of embracing what you're talking about, which I think is huge, is saying there's just a mystery to God. And that's kind of the beauty of God being infinite. And I heard somebody say this once, I thought it was so good, is that God's infinite and God is love. And that means God's love is infinite. And he said, so what that means is we can't ever fully comprehend it. And there's all parts of the scripture that talk about that that you'd be able to kind of comprehend how vast and wide and long. What he's really saying is you can't. You can only just embrace the mystery of God loves me. And what he says, because it's infinite, then it would take all of infinity to really understand it. And that's all really heaven is us diving deep into how big God is and how big His love is. And so But yeah.
And then the person who actually asked that question had mentioned in their statement, they said, a lot of people will say to me, if Jesus is God, how in the world could he was actually praying to himself? What does that look like? And that's part of the mysterious part of it.
Right.
Is, there is 3 distinct persons, and they interact with one another, and that.
Yeah, in a relational way.
In a relational way. And that's to me, that has been such a cool part of understanding God and his nature, is that he has existed for eternity past, eternity future, in community.
Right.
With himself because of that dynamic, the Trinity. And here I am, talking about it, and I'm hesitating because it's so mysterious, but that is what is revealed to us in Scripture, revealed to us through Jesus, that yes, Jesus is just as fully God as God the Father and God the Holy Spirit. And a lot of people want to push back on that and say, well, it can't be because there's God the Father and he, and that whole thing. But, Jesus had no problem embracing the Godhood. I always point to people when they say, would Jesus really think he was God? And I said, well, if he didn't think he was God, then he certainly didn't act like it, because anytime anyone referred to him that way, especially when you see towards the end of the Gospels, many times they're falling down at his feet and worshiping him. He never stops anybody. And that's interesting. If he really did value God the way he said he did, if somebody worships you, you go, oh no, don't do that. In fact, we see the disciples doing that.
Right.
When people try to put God-like attributes on them, they go, no, we're just men. We're just people. Well, then they fall down and worship. And of course, in Revelation, you've got people falling down at the feet of Jesus and worshiping. And not once has anybody ever stopped from doing that.
Right.
He is taking worship as God. So fully God, fully human, fully who he is, but still at the same time all one.
Relational in that way. And and you may hear some of this if you weren't the person who asked the question and kind of think, okay, but why does any of this matter? Because it just feels like even all this is very kind of philosophical,
a mental exercise.
And it's mystery. But I heard someone explain it to me this way, and I thought this was so good. As they said, the part you talked about of God exists within a community within Himself. That God is a community, and a part of that is when we say God is love. That's almost exactly what we're talking about. Is that before we existed, before God had any outside object to be the object of his love. God, in relationship, because it talks about that the Son submits to the Father and the Father submits to the Son, and it's this whole
symbiotic relationship.
Right, and that may seem once again weird, but what it comes to me is that God didn't need me. God chose me, and that's a whole different thing, because all of us have ended up in relationships where either we or someone else has said, oh, I really love you, and because I love you, I need you. Yeah. And it quickly becomes clear that's not really love, because when I need you,
that's codependent.
Yes, the Jerry Maguire, you complete me.
Yeah.
That is, when I need you, it becomes less about me loving you and about me making sure I get love.
There you go.
And God does not exist in that kind. That's how God can purely be love, is because God is love by his very nature. And so I get that the whole concept of all this may seem a little kind of intellectual, and on the side it doesn't matter. But I think that part you can, just as a reminder of, God loves you not because he needs you, but because he chooses to love you. And he's just who he is by his nature. I think that's huge.
Good stuff, man. That's some application that makes this discussion maybe a little more worthwhile. So.
Well, and that was not short, so.
No, it wasn't.
Apologize.
Well, the original answer was short.
The first, we gave a one-word answer.
The answer was no, but.
That's right.
So, anyway.
But there is importance to the discussion.
Yes.
So thank you for asking the question, because it definitely was a worthwhile discussion.
Definitely. All right, on to Sunday. This past week, we continued Jesus is Greater, and Ed, he's not here to defend himself, so we can say anything we want about his message.
Well, I wasn't in the building on Sunday, because
that's right, you were at retreat.
I was at retreat with our students, but I was able to catch the live stream on YouTube. If you don't know that, we have a live stream that goes this week. It was actually at like 3 o'clock, so I got to watch it live with some people because it was actually not live, but there were some other people on at the time that I got to watch. But normally it's live during our 10:30 service, and you can catch it on Facebook. You can catch it on our YouTube channel. This YouTube channel, correct? It's the same YouTube stream. So.
Everything's on this channel.
So for some reason you're out of town on a Sunday morning, and you still want to catch up with the teaching.
And then once we broadcast it live, it's captured and archived right here on this YouTube channel, so you can just watch it anytime, the full service from start to finish. Or we also put the message, just the message part.
Just the message.
So you can pick and choose whatever you want.
It was a very good experience. Yes, I love Sunday's service, and here at the Sharpsburg campus we had 8 baptisms.
I don't even think I knew that yet. Nobody told me the number.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we had
I'm
8.
Shocked as you are.
8 baptisms. So yeah, I got to see. I think 4 of them were at the 10:30 service. 4 or 5 were at the 10:30 service, and so that was. And I had a couple of friends that were baptized. So it was very cool to get to have that. And so
cool. Well, Ed talked to us about the story of Nicodemus come to Jesus at night, and that whole conversation that they have surrounding the idea of being born again. So. As I'm doing now when I watch the message, I sit with my phone out and I look like I'm taking notes. I kind of am. I'm typing out quotes.
There you go.
Stuff like, that would be a good discussion to have on the Wednesday podcast.
There you go.
Here's one I pulled out that just it rings true with me. It's something that honestly I've gotten right over the past decade or so in my approach to doing ministry and approaching people. But Ed talked about the fact that God accepts us just as we are.
Right.
But then he went on to say, but not everything that we do. He doesn't accept all of that. But, and this is the key part, you don't have to change any of that in order to be accepted by God. Once you are accepted by God, that's when God begins to change you.
Right.
Specifically that new birth that he went into and talked about.
Right.
And the thought that I had on that was, and I've preached on this before, I actually took this message back to my home church. My home church calls me every now and then and asks me to come speak for them. And I was like, what's the one thing that I've learned over the past few decades that I just want to take back to them and share with them? And it was that idea of these 3 words, belong, believe, and behave. And the way it goes is like this, the way I was sort of taught growing up in church was that first you got to behave. You gotta
do all the right
do
stuff.
the right stuff and stop doing all the bad stuff and clean up your act. And if you're in bad relationships or you're into drugs or you're a cheat and steal or whatever it is,
don't even show up.
Don't bother because you got to get all that straight first. And then once you've learned to behave, then you come and we'll teach you how to believe. We'll give you all the right thoughts and all the right ways to think about God. We'll help you figure out the Trinity or whatever crazy stuff, we want you to believe. And then once you get all that figured out, then you belong in our community. And for me, I have learned that reading the life of Jesus literally flipped that upside down.
Yes.
He invited people to come and belong, be a part of this community, come follow me, be on my team, way before they ever did anything or believed anything. And then as they learned to behave and they learned to believe, then they grew and into all that God wanted them to be. But the belong part was there from the beginning. And I think that to me is the beauty of what Jesus came to bring.
Right.
And what he was inviting, I think, Nicodemus to. Hey, just come and be a part of this movement that I'm starting.
Right.
We'll figure all the other stuff out. We'll get all that, behavior stuff figured out because you'll have this rebirth that happens. And so...
Well, and behaving always comes after the birth. Because if you think about, once again, just think of, and Jesus and then the gospel, the New Testament writers use this language a lot of becoming like infants again and talk about being children imitating their father and all this kind of stuff that when a child first comes out, they have no concept of any behavior, right?
Absolutely not.
They come out and they also don't have any of the right ideas about stuff, but they belong. That's the first important key concept. In fact, that's one thing that you learn.
We'd never parent that way.
Right.
We would never say, until you start behaving, you're not my son.
Right.
I mean, and then we expect God to do that as our Heavenly
Well,
Father.
we understand that as a key concept because my wife and I are foster parents, and one of the things they teach you in the way that honestly the difference in raising foster parents, when you have foster children who come into your home, as they said, it's similar, but unfortunately the way it often works is because the children come in at an older age. You start first on the behave part because you're like, I need you to act the right way, I need you to do this, but they talk about the important part is, and it's called trust, relationship-based something. I can't remember exactly the whole, it's one of the very long things that I can't remember. But the idea basically behind it is that you have to start with the connecting part. You have to start with the belonging part. That you bring a child in and you say, hey, whether you ever behave the right way or not, you're okay with me.
Yep.
I love you, because that is what you do with an infant. When an infant comes in, the infant understands just by being in your arms and you feeding it and you take care of it. The infant understands mom and dad are for me. And then you start to teach them the right ideas and the right behavior, but that comes out of the belonging. And when you start with the behaving, often even children, they run from it because they go, I'm not here for the behaving, I'm here for the belonging.
Yes.
I want to belong to you. And it is the same way that God opens his arms and says, hey, before you ever behave, you belong to me. And then out of that, there's ways that I want you to live, not so that you belong to me, but because you belong to me.
Exactly.
I've heard someone else explain it as it's almost like all the things that we tend to think of as the behaving, the kind of rules, that they're more family rules, that they're things you do because you're a part of this family.
That's right.
And, when you go to someone else's house, when you were a kid and you went to someone else's house, the mom and dad of that family, or I'll flip it around the other way. When you had a friend come stay the night, your mom and dad did not make them follow the same rules because they go, they're not my kid.
That's not my kid.
They got
Not
away
my
with
house.
stuff that you didn't get away with, and it's a whole different way of really viewing it.
Yeah, and this is, and as Ed said on Sunday, this has become sort of the hallmark, characteristic of Community Christian Church.
Yes.
And it's that whole thing of we love everyone always, everyone is welcome, nobody is perfect, and we accept that coming in, and that's the way God has treated me. So therefore, I'm going to treat every single person that way. So you walk in the door, you bring whatever you've got, whatever you're doing. We used to say this, I don't know if you're new around here, you may not remember this, but we changed the welcome script over the years. And one of the very first welcome scripts that we said, we try to say the same thing in different ways, but what we say to newcomers, we used to say this: we don't care what you believe, we don't care what you did last night. That used to be, I used to say that every Sunday that I got up on stage. We don't care what you did last night. You belong here. You're welcomed here. And to me now, as such an accepted kind of simple statement as that is, it became sort of a revolutionary thing to some people. It's like, really? You don't? I mean, of course I care that you're doing something that's sinful or harmful to you. That's not what we mean. We just mean, even if you did something that you would be ashamed of on Saturday night, the fact that you are here, the fact that you walked in this door, does not preclude you from being here and being a part of this community and embracing the teaching and moving closer to Jesus. We're all walking the same direction, and whether you screwed it up last night, that's irrelevant, because that's the point, And I don't know, it seems to be more and more that I get to know a lot of Christians, and that seems to be more of a controversial kind of, and I think Ed mentioned this in the message. I don't know if you remember him saying this, and he's right. That posture that we have taken over the years has given us a lot more heat from other Christians than I would have ever dreamed.
Yeah.
It seems like, well, you're going soft on sin if you do that, and I don't see it that way. I think that's the only way to remedy sin.
Yeah.
Because the other way of just condemning it and outright excluding people because of it tends to just do the opposite of what Jesus
people go into hiding
was doing.
Yeah.
Why would I want to be near someone who was just basically going to remind me of how much I didn't belong, and how much I wasn't wanted, and how horrible that I was? It's not most people that I meet, with some exceptions, most people that I meet, they do not need me to remind them of how screwed up they are.
Right.
They know, for the most part. I mean, they get that I've done wrong. I don't think there's anybody that I cross paths with that I say, yeah, you think you're perfect? I don't think anybody thinks that.
Right.
unless they're just delusional.
Right, right.
Everybody gets that. And so when you start from that and say, yeah, me too.
Yes.
And that's something I've heard your dad and I have both talked about is before the quote-unquote Me Too movement. So we can't ever use that terminology probably again. But we said we want to be a Me Too church. And what we meant by that was we want to be a church where no matter who comes in the door or what they confess, we want this to be a place where somebody looks them in the eye and says, you know what, me too. You know, I'm imperfect. I struggle with that.
Spot,
I'm in the same boat as you are, no matter what they're here to confess. You know, I'm an alcoholic. I struggle with an impure thought or attraction, or I hurt my family, or I'm a bad dad, or whatever it is. We can go, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So let's come over and figure this out together.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the part of the second part of this I think is huge, which is we talk a lot about, we have different kind of things, and the no perfect people's one of the things, but for a while we had this phrasing where we go, everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect, and anything is possible.
Yep.
And I think that part is so huge because, like you said on Sunday, this is a place where no perfect people are allowed. And I've often said to people, hey, you can come just as you are, but we hope you leave completely different.
Absolutely.
We hope you leave and you do come to a place where people are saying, yeah, my marriage is not perfect, and yeah, my parenting's not perfect. So let's go on that journey together of being more perfect like Jesus, because there comes a point where, and this is often a phrase, I don't think it's a bad phrase, so don't hear me say this, but I think it often misleads where people say things like, well, Christians aren't perfect, we're just forgiven. And what often ends up happening a lot is we stay so much in the not perfect and we're forgiven, and nothing really changes about our lives.
Yeah, it's like excusing it.
I'm excusing, anything that I need to do. And we really want this to be a church where, like you said, everybody comes in, and all of us are open about the fact that I'm not perfect, and I got problems, and I'm working stuff out. But that the beauty that I've seen, because I grew up in this church, and so I've not really known anything else, is all of us have seen marriages healed and families put together and addictions overcome. And I mean, it's just, I don't want to say like commonplaces if it doesn't matter, but it's normal around here for lives to be changed. And I think it is because of that first half of it, of everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect. But then there has to be this commitment of all of us going, and so then anything can be possible. That because with Jesus, nothing is impossible. All things are possible with God. What that means is if I come and I just submit myself to him and just say, I'm ready for, Ed talked Sunday about a new birth.
Yep.
That I will become like a child again and say, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do. Anything is possible. And God's accepting me, so I'm not doing this to earn God's love. I'm doing this because I'm loved. And I think that's a great, we talk about Dallas Willard almost every time, but that's the quote I love is he says, grace, or this gift of God's love and forgiveness for us, he said, most of us say, well, you can't earn it, which is right. You can't earn it. But he said it's not opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning.
Yes.
Grace is not opposed to me. So a lot of us, what people end up doing is goes, because I can't earn it, then I shouldn't really work too hard at anything because that might come across as me trying to earn God's love. And you can't earn it, so just stop trying. And his point, I think, is huge, is grace is not opposed to you putting any effort into the relationship. It's opposed to you having to earn it. So now I can love and I can serve and I can live the way I was supposed to live, not because I feel like I have to do that in order to belong, but because I already belong.
That's what Paul meant when he said, Apostle Paul wrote, work out your salvation.
Right.
That's what he was calling. He was calling out effort.
Right.
Not earning, because he says in other places you can't earn your salvation.
Absolutely.
But then he says work out. Says which one is it? It's both. He's saying work out your salvation. But then he throws in this phrase at the end of it. He says with fear and trembling. That means total humility, understanding of who I am and where I've come from and what God has done for me already and putting me where I am in relationship to him. And so now, out of the outpouring of that experience, that rebirth, then I put forth effort to become more of the person that he calls me to be. Not because I'm earning something, but because that's the best way to live.
Right.
And so why wouldn't I want that? And if he truly is a loving father that I trust in, which we'll talk about in just a minute, then why wouldn't I give myself over to that kind of life? Why wouldn't I do whatever he said? And like Ed said on Sunday, I just say that, okay, he's right about everything. One thing that I was going to say that you triggered a thought in my head, that you talk about growing up in this church and what you've seen and the kind of atmosphere that we created here. I've raised my kids in this church, and
Right.
my kids are now teenagers, and since day one they've been here. And one of the things that I know for sure has happened as being a part of this community is they have seen a lot of things that I know as a kid growing up in a more traditional setting of church I did not see. And a lot of people would say, "Ooh, are you sure you want to raise your kids in an environment where they can come to church and sit next to somebody who maybe is not the type of character I'd want my kids to hang
Right.
around?" Or, I run into somebody at church this morning who smells of alcohol, or just put out a cigarette in the parking lot, and all these things that they tag as being not wholesome or not, And I've said for years to people, look, we're not safe for the whole family.
Right.
Because we are a collection of people bruised and beat up and messed up in all kinds of different ways. Some of us hide it much better.
Right.
Others of us don't. And you are going to cross paths with somebody that you probably wouldn't encourage your kid to go hang around. But you know what? As we come together and as we experience this new birth, we see impossible things happen
Right.
in people's lives, and we
Right.
get to see and witness, like you said, 8 people giving their lives to Jesus through baptism on Sunday.
All adults.
All
which
adults.
which is not common in every church.
It just doesn't happen very often. So now we get to see that Jesus was right. The Holy Spirit gives birth to spiritual life in
Yes.
people, and we get to see it. We get a front row seat to it every Sunday. And yes, there's times when some of it is messy and uncomfortable and just hard. Let's just call it what it is. But it's worth it in the end when I see those kinds of things happen. And then, and back to the comment I was making about my kids, I'm happy that they have gotten to see that happen.
Right.
And they understand the love and the grace and the power of God. So
Absolutely.
all of those things. All right. Last thing I want to talk about from Sunday that Ed mentioned was, and this is something that I didn't know. Man, I went to Bible college, and they didn't teach me this. That phrase when in John 3:16, when it says, God so loved the world, He gave His only Son, that whoever would believe in Him. And then that phrase, which again, I didn't know this until later. I even took Greek, and it didn't hit me until later. The first time that those two words, believe in, were put together
right.
in the Greek language. And up until that point, the phrase was just believe. And it was more on the lines of, hey, if you just believe that, something happened.
Right.
Or you believe in this thought, that's when, but Jesus, or if John just added that parenthetically, which there's a debate on that. But whoever wrote that verse was intentionally trying to get us to know something, that it's not just a believe that something happened. It is a belief in.
Yes.
And it's that trust part that comes
Yes.
in. That really is, and I think I've seen some translations of John 3:16 say not necessarily believe, it's trusts.
Yes.
Because that's really what the phrase meant.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, it's about putting your life's weight on something, that the decisions I make are really bound up in whether He is who He said He is. And I think that's a huge part of what we talk about when we talk about following God, is that, or following Jesus, in particular, is everything is really based on who He is. And it's not just His teachings, and His teachings are obviously so important, and they're revolutionary. There's never really been anything like this before. But really, His teachings are valuable because of Him and His life and His death and His resurrection. That this whole thing of Jesus proving, hey, I am who I said I am. I am the Son of God. I am, as John 3:16 says, God's Son that was sent here to give His life. That being confirmed in His resurrection gives the teaching all the weight that it needs. Because it really is one of those things that when you see all of this together, and you choose, I'm going to put my life's weight on that, and the reason I'm going to love my enemies, and the reason that I'm going to be as generous as I need to be, and the reason that I'm going to not live for myself but live for others, is not because it just makes sense, because most of the time it's not going to make sense, it's certainly not in the moment.
No.
And so if it's just, well, hey, this is the smart way of doing things, it's not going to feel smart in the moment. It is smart because it comes from the smartest man who ever lived.
That's right.
But the only reason that we know it's smart is because of who he is.
Who he is.
Right. And so if, a lot of us have to start at, well, I'm just going to do what Jesus said. But at some point that does lead to this point of, I'm going to do everything he said because of who he is.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat with people in my office and they'll come in, and usually it's something along the lines of, this person has done me wrong,
Right.
and what am I going to do about this? And if I ever start to lean in to say, well, at some point forgiveness has to take place, and it's something, and it can be something really egregious, and people, how in the world could I do that? Why in the world would I do that? That's like waving a white flag. That's giving up. That's putting myself in a vulnerable position, and that doesn't make, ultimately what they're saying to me is, to forgive that person for what they've done, or to turn the other cheek and just, that doesn't make sense. And I just have to admit to them, okay, from where you sit right now, I get that. It doesn't make sense. And I see all your reasons, and you're right, that logically does not make sense. So why do it? Well, ultimately, I have to come back to that. It's, well, Jesus said that was the way to live, and I believe he's right about everything.
Right.
And so I'm going, I think it's Andy Stanley that I hear say this all the time. He says, if you can predict your own resurrection and pull it off, I'll go with whatever you say.
Yeah.
And once you've convinced that, and once you're convinced of that in your mind, then everything Jesus said is the way to go, whether or not it feels right in the moment.
Yes.
And I have to push past that, and that's the struggle of
That's the trust part.
That's the trust part, is I just go, I don't get it, I don't feel it, but you know what? You said it, I'm going that direction, and you're just gonna have to prove to me down the line, and then I continue, and that's the continuous trust, even when I make the call and I start to do things, that counterintuitive kind of thing, and I don't see the results right away. I've talked with a friend recently about, I'm headed a direction and I don't feel like anything's changing, and I go, yeah, I get that. It's just gonna take a while, and in the meantime, you've got to continue to practice trust and believe that it's gonna eventually. And you know what? You might not get that feeling that you're looking for eventually, but you got to just continue to. If he's right, and if he is who he said he is, then you're on the right path.
Well, and I think it's the part about, when we talk about this of, when you said feeling, I think that's so true, and you even said counterintuitive, I think that's true, is I think often when you hear this, you go, see, that's why I can't do the whole Jesus thing, because it's just not logical. You've even said it doesn't feel logical in the moment. The problem is, it actually is logical.
Well,
we often live off of intuition and feeling, and we don't even realize we're doing it. Because, see, the logical thing is the thing you said, Andy said, that if there's a person who predicted their own resurrection and pulled it off and said, hey, the reason why is because I'm the Son of God and I know everything, then the only logical thing is to go, well,
that's right.
Well, then I'm just going to do what he says, but it doesn't feel logical in the moment, because intuitively I feel like my perception of reality is the one that really works. It's like my oldest daughter loves to climb trees, and so she'll often get herself up into a tree so high she doesn't know how to come back down. And she'll get down, and sometimes the trees are ones where she'll have to have someone boost her up into it. So the only way to get down is to jump. And she's scared to jump. And so I'll stand underneath her and say, jump into my arms. And everyone who's ever had to do anything like this with a child knows they don't want to jump. They don't want to jump. And because in their mind, there is no logical way this is going to work. But I know, as the older, wiser parent, I know from where I'm standing, there's no way you're going to jump and I'm not going to catch you. I know I'm going to catch you. And that's the trust part that comes into it. And that really is Jesus' whole paradigm for everything, is that Jesus, he says at one point, I only do what I see the Father doing. And it's because, and I don't just think that's even flowery kind of metaphorical language. I think Jesus was interacting with the kingdom of God at every moment, and he sees God at work in everything. And so when he sees God at work, he goes, well, I'm just going to do whatever God does. And so Jesus perceived a kingdom where the only logical thing to do when someone wrongs you is to love and forgive them. It's the only logical thing to do, because God is a God who says, I reward that. And that's the way, because, he says at one point, if you want to get ahead, if you want to be first, you got to be last. And that already just seems completely false. But Jesus goes, in my kingdom, that's the only way that makes sense. That's the only way. Or to be generous, or the one that I talk about a lot to people is when you get to a point where you're super anxious about something, and I have friends tell me this all the time, and I know you're going to tell me. I know what you're going to say. And I know it's right. Trust in Jesus, trust in God. I was talking to a group on Sunday night, and I said, when that's what comes out, what you know is that's not actually what they believe then.
Yeah.
Because if there's a difference between knowing and trusting in something, what you ultimately trust is either I've got to figure it out, or a lot of us have a kind of superstition around worry that if I think about it, or I come at this from every angle, then somehow that's going to keep it from happening. That's what you trust in, because honestly, even just saying trust in God is not as, what I would say, offensive to someone dealing with anxiety as what Jesus would say, which is when Jesus said, hey, you're worried about something, go look at the birds.
That's right.
You come and you say, hey, I'm afraid my marriage is in trouble. I'm just worried about what's going to happen in the future. And then you come to Jesus and he goes, the birds always have food. And you'd be like, what are you talking about? The birds have food. But Jesus perceived a world where the only logical thing is you look at the beauty of creation, you look how there really is enough resources for everyone. The problem with our world is not overpopulation. The problem with our world as far as resources go is we are not allocating them correctly.
That's right.
Because we are not using them in the correct way. And Jesus perceives a world that says, God's provided everything, so why would you worry? Why would you freak out? Why would you worry about tomorrow? Because tomorrow's going to take care of itself. That's the trust in part. And that's the part that's hard. Most of us are pretty good. I would say most of us who follow Jesus or call ourselves Christians are good at the believe that part.
Yes.
I know about the Trinity, or I know that Jesus is the Son of God. If you gave me a test, I could check off all the correct answers. But when you come to my day-to-day, am I repenting, and I thought his example was great, of turning my feet, that I'm just turning my feet away from this old way of life and I'm pointing them towards Jesus. Most of us aren't doing that part.
Yeah.
And that's where the anything is possible happens.
Well, it's when, like you said, I've heard the exact same thing. Somebody will present me with a dilemma or an issue, and they'll go, and I know what you're going to say, or I know what, Jesus says, or I know what's right, but.
Yes.
And I always want to go, well, whenever you say but, it's basically say, forget everything I just said. Here's what I really think. So that's the disconnect. I know what's right in my head, but I don't really feel like, or I can't, or I won't actually put it into practice. This is the distinction I think Jesus would make for us is you believe that something is true.
Yes.
But you have not yet believed in it. In other words, you haven't put, like to use that analogy, put your whole weight on it, like we've always done with the stool. Like we're both sitting on stools for those of you who are not watching, and we always talk about, I can point to the stool and say, yep, I believe that stool is there, and that doesn't prove anything about my trust level.
No.
I can even, like right now, I got one foot on the floor and half a butt cheek on the stool. I'm just one cheeking it. So I've not fully put my trust in the stool until I take both feet off the ground like this. And I sit like this now, because now if the thing goes down, I'm going down with it.
Yes.
So now I know my full weight, my full trust is in it. That's the life Jesus calls us to do. Put full weight on me. Put everything, everything in the Jesus basket, and just trust that He's got it. He knows what He's doing. He'll take care of it. Then you're going to start living that rebirth kind of life, and you'll live, according to the way Jesus called us to live in the kingdom. So.
Well, and that's the ultimate part of when you hear, or and it's in the Bible. You read it in the Bible where it said we walk by faith, not by sight. It's not this idea of blind faith in that just someone tells you believe in Jesus, so you believe in Jesus, and that's the it. It may be that you investigate and you've got to figure out, but what you're investigating is whether Jesus Himself is who He claimed to be. Did Jesus rise from the dead? Or if you can really put the focus on that, because, and we've talked about this really in this series, there's so much that really, when you talk about investigating Christianity, I'm investigating whether I want to be a Christian, and this is just, you can go on the internet and there are 1,000 rabbit holes you'll get lost down that won't ever point you towards Jesus. And if you can investigate whether this, going back to your stool analogy, investigate whether is this properly secured, that I can put my weight on. Investigate how much weight can this hold, but you're investigating the person. And then at that point, Jesus says, hey, you walk by faith and trusting me, because you can't see the kingdom the way you can't see how it's logical to jump from that tree into my arms. But if you go by faith and not what you can see, your perception of reality, then in that moment, then you're really walking by faith. And I think that's the important part, because I certainly don't want you to hear from what we're saying is just Christianity's blind faith and it's not logical. You got to turn your brain off. It's not at all. We're saying it's only logical once you come to the conclusion Jesus is who he said he is. He rose from the dead. He really is the Son of God. At that point, the only logical conclusion is he's worthy of putting my trust in.
Yep. So. All right. Anything else from Sunday you had?
I thought everything. The message was great. Thought the service was great, and obviously the baptisms. That's what really gets us psyched around. It's not necessarily just a baptism, but the fact that people's lives are changing and that people are getting it, because it really can transform, and that's real people.
Definitely. So. Cool. So this coming Sunday, I'm going to be back up teaching, and we're taking another section of Jesus' life, and I don't know whether I want to give it away yet, but let's just say this is one of those things that I think nobody wants to do, but everybody loves it when everybody else does it.
Ooh, that's a good little tease right there.
I don't ever want to do it. I always draw back from it.
I hope everyone does it for me.
Yes, but everyone should treat me this way, but I don't want to treat anybody else this way. It's that.
That's good.
It's that thing. So come check it out.
Yes.
All right. Ready for the top 5?
I am ready for the top 5.
Nathan has the top 5 today.
It's me.
And it's just he and we're going to debate it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not debate.
I don't know. This one actually I'll say is a little more open for debate, because I'll say normally I've been approaching this with a little bit more of a tongue-in-cheek, not trying to give too much away by myself, but I thought I'm actually going to be a little more vulnerable today, get a little more in with the top 5 here. And so people know a lot about my love of food, you see. I'm a food guy. You're a food guy.
I am.
But I think we're different kinds of food guys. Jason is a excellent chef. If you didn't know this, we used to do cooking contests back in the day for our preteen thing. Jason would make some delicious creations. And Jason, would you call yourself a foodie?
Not in the way that most people use that word.
All right, but I know you have very eclectic.
I do
taste,
like a lot of things.
A lot of different kinds.
And I love
food.
new stuff. But that's my nature anyway. I'm always wanting to move on. I'm that way with music. I'm that way with movies. I want to know what's next. What's the new thing? So I'm not just like I'm on to one thing and I just want to do that over and over again. So I'm all open to trying new restaurants, new tastes, all that kind of stuff.
Well, this is the opposite of that. This is I'm a man of simple taste, and really mostly what I'm into is just some fried chicken.
There you go.
That's just basic. I'm a fried chicken.
You grew up in the South. You better be on the fried chicken.
I did, and I have not hidden for other people my love of the great restaurant Popeyes. Everyone knows I talk about. We now got 2 in this area right now.
Got to get that sponsorship.
I know. I'd like to get that in. So this, though, I think everyone would know if I talked about my favorite kind of chicken or anything. Everyone knows Popeye's going to win. Everyone knows also for me, or I shouldn't say maybe not everyone knows this, but I'm not a Chick-fil-A kind of guy, and I know that's even more sacrilege within the Christian community.
You might go to hell for that.
I'm just saying. I know that's some Jesus chicken. I don't want to be messing with that. But I'm not saying I hate it. I'll eat it, but it's just not my number one. But these are my top 5 places to get chicken that's not Popeyes.
Okay. So you just go ahead and wipe that off.
Yeah, because everyone knows that's number 1. Like it's number 1. Everything else.
Now let me ask you this: at Popeyes, what should I get?
I mean, I don't know. I know people love the chicken sandwich. My wife's all
I've yet to try
the tenders. It's good. It's good. I really like it. But I mean, I'm the 3-piece combo man.
Okay.
And it depends.
Spicy or no?
Oh, definitely spicy.
That's what I thought.
Definitely spicy.
Okay.
And you got to make sure they give you the biscuit. Biscuit's a great part. All the sides are good. Onion rings are delicious. Everything's great there. But this is this. So
other places.
You brought up the chicken sandwich at Popeyes. I think there was one that was left out. So this is a chicken sandwich.
Okay.
All right. The one left, so you had the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. I will say the Chick-fil-A spicy chicken sandwich is pretty good. I know a lot of people like that, so that's pretty good. I personally think it should have been up against the Popeye sandwich. But there's another one I think people keep forgetting, which is Wendy's has a spicy chicken sandwich, which is pretty darn good.
It don't play. I'll tell you that right now.
It's a good sandwich. It's pretty spicy, and if you ever go when they have the ghost pepper stuff, they have like a ghost pepper sauce that they put on sometimes on the fries, but they sometimes put it on the sandwich with some jalapenos on top. It is a spicy, spicy deal. So I think so. You're a fan also.
I am a big fan. I also enjoy the spicy nuggets.
Yes, the spicy nuggets are very good. I think you can get that in the 4 for $4.
You can interchange spicy with regular now anytime you want.
See, that's a good deal right there.
That's a great deal.
That's a good deal. All right, so then number 4, I kind of went back and forth on other kind of traditional, you got your KFC. Bojangles is really great. People love that around here.
Yeah.
There's one place that, it's actually in Atlanta. I haven't been to the one that's in Atlanta, but I've been to the one that's in Memphis, which is the original. It's called Gus's World Famous Chicken. And Jennifer and I went because we'd heard it was world famous chicken, started in Memphis. There ain't nothing unique, I would say, about this chicken, but it's the best tasting fried chicken. I can't tell you what it is, and I understand. I think there's one like, I know there's one on Peachtree Street, like in downtown, over by where the mall is there, like right Andrew Young meets Peachtree. Anyway.
Cool.
It is absolutely delicious.
I have not had it. I'd like to try it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to take a staff field trip up to
do a remote podcast.
There you go, Gus's world famous chicken.
Yeah,
so
all right.
It's a good deal. All right. The number 3, I'm pretty sure you've had this.
Okay.
This one's pretty darn good. This is the buffalo chicken roller at Quick Trip. That buffalo chicken roll, that's a good piece of chicken right there.
You can't go wrong with roller food.
I'm just saying, the Quick Trip roller food, that's good food right there. And it's pretty spicy. You get the little buffalo one. It's got like some kind of cheese in the middle of it.
Yeah, they're great. And they're huge, man.
Yeah, it's a big roller.
Eat 2 of those, I'm full.
Yeah, well, and you get like 2 for $2.50 or something like that. It's definitely worth it. Go get a big old drink. It's good.
I just love Quick Trip all the way. Quick Trip, I go in there and just get lost.
Yeah, well, you might actually get lost. It's a big
lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff.
That's right.
Awesome.
All right, here we go. Now, this is getting a little more intricate. This is number 2. Best place to get chicken, you can get this in Noonan, is the Cajun. So this is 2 different kinds of hot wings. There's the Cajun wings and the spicy Korean Q wings at Wingstop. Here in Noonan, in Ashley Park. So those of you who are watching this over at the Ashley Park campus, after church on Sunday,
right across the way.
Go right over there. They have delicious. They fry everything right there, fresh in the store. Even the French fries, they cut them up. They fry them right there. But yeah, I always go, and when I go, I get normally because you can split up your order. So I'll get about 5 that are the Cajun, and then I'll get 5 that are spicy Korean Q.
I haven't tried that.
It is like a sweet barbecue sauce that is really spicy. It is one of the spicier ones they offer. And
isn't that place owned by like a famous rapper?
It is owned by Rick Ross, who
Ross.
I understand was in it. In fact, I had a student who didn't know who Rick Ross was, but had noticed there was a lot of people around trying to take pictures of Rick Ross going, is this Rick Ross? Is this Rick Ross? So like trying to be very kind of,
Oh, that's great.
Anyway.
Okay, that's another place I need to
try. I never saw the picture, so I couldn't tell if it was Rick Ross or not.
All right, cool.
All right, and then number one.
Number one.
Besides place to get. They're Hattie B's Nashville hot chicken. You get the large white plate, which is you got white meat plate, you got your dark meat plate. But with both, if you I'm more of a chicken breast kind of guy, so you can get 2 basically quarters. You get the breast and the wing. You get 2 of those. It's like $10, and they're huge.
Wow.
They're huge, super spicy. And then with the dark meat, I think you get a leg and a thigh. So whatever your pick is on that, but I'm more on the white meat side.
Where do we find a Hattie B's?
Now there's a Hattie B's on Moreland Avenue.
Okay.
And it is worth the drive. I'll drive almost 40 minutes to go up to Hattie B's, and it's a little harder once you got 4 kids. But when we just had the one, we would go up there pretty often and get some Hattie B's. And now I will say there's a Nashville hot chicken place here in Noonan now, Joella's, and it's pretty good, but it's not as good as Hattie B's.
Okay.
It's just it ain't even getting close. So
well, you ain't gonna get sponsored by them now.
I know Joella's ain't gonna do it. I will say this: I went into Joella's the other day, and because I'd gone when it opened, I was very excited. You know this.
I knew.
I was very excited about Joella's. I went opening
Way
day.
more excited than I usually get when restaurants open.
Well, anyway, because once again, I've only got like 5 things I'm really excited about. And
Chicken's one.
Chicken is one of the things. So I went, and I liked it fine. I don't want no Joella's people coming at me. But my wife and I decided recently we're going to go back. So it was my birthday, and I said, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to try it. And one of my complaints was that the hot, I didn't think was that hot.
I don't know.
And so I thought, okay. So they had one that was over it, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's their number 1. And I order it, and when I order it, they say, okay, well, you have to sign a waiver. And I said, a waiver?
I like this.
And I said, okay. So I signed the waiver, and I thought, well, this is probably just a
What does the waiver do?
I guess
actually?
I can't sue them
can't
if
sue
I have
them?
a heart attack while eating the chicken.
Whatever.
So we go and we sit down, and we're kind of talking. I was like, I think it's just marketing, because the hot wasn't that hot. Like I put like on a 1 to 10 scale, their hottest besides this was like a 5 or a 6. So I thought, okay, well the hot's gonna be like an 8 or 9. This thing was made with Carolina Reaper peppers.
Oh.
So it's like 2.5 million on the Scoville thing. And so I didn't realize that until I took a bite of it, and I could not breathe. It was so hot. It was so hot. I told her, I said, this isn't even fun anymore. Like, you go from a 6 to like a 13? Why? I want something in between.
There's no intermediate.
I wanted something in between. So I will say this, if you ever go, and apparently they have like a challenge where if you can eat 2 of the their quarters with a breast and a wing, you can eat 2 of those, then I guess like you get your meal for free or something.
Wow.
But I can't imagine a person.
Did you even finish?
Well, I had to take all the breading off. I could eat the chicken, which was still spicy because but it wasn't as spicy as the stuff. So I will say this, Joel, is you beat me on that.
Okay.
You beat me on that. That was pretty darn spicy.
That's got to be high. I've seen you eat some hot stuff. So.
It was hot.
Well, that's good to know, man.
Yeah, but anyway, there you go. That's my top 5. So
Top
if you
5
ever
chicken.
get up to Atlanta, Hattie B's, Gus's, world famous. That's the place to go, man.
There you go. So, and we're always helping you out finding new places.
That's right.
So.
And maybe y'all can help us out with getting us some sponsorships.
Just bring us some chicken.
Just some free chicken next week.
And what's interesting is, your dad's not a chicken guy.
No, he's not. But I will say the only way he'll eat it is fried. He doesn't mind it fried. I think chicken, and I'd agree with him. I'm not much into a grilled piece of chicken, but I will say if it's fried,
Kind of ruins it.
Yeah, that's right. Why are we doing that?
And all the health nuts are screaming at us right now.
Oh, I understand. I eat grilled chicken. I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not happy about it.
I'd rather have it fried up.
I would.
There's not much in this world that I wouldn't rather have fried.
No, that's,
I mean,
100%,
come on. Let's just be
100%,
honest.
100%. Oreos are good. Fried Oreos
That's right.
are amazing.
I know what's good for me.
That's right.
And I know what I like.
That's right. That's right.
Then those things don't necessarily cross paths. I'm just saying.
That's
so,
right.
All right. So, all right. Well, thanks for doing this.
I am the
duo.
top 5. I'm ready to do it.
And thanks for. I think we did all right.
We
without
held it down.
We did all right without
I'm sure. I mean, that was plenty long. So there you guys go.
That's right.
You got your weekly community Christian little taste right there. So there you go.
Ed might listen back on this and go, "Wow,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not needed."
Maybe we'll see.
Know. We'll just see.
We'll see what he says.
He might be back next week. He might not.
He
We'll
might
see.
not.
All right. Well, have a good week, guys. We'll see you on Sunday.
See ya.